Good morning. We start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. From the heart of the savior of 100 deities of Tushita, on a peak of cloud resembling a clam of extremely white fresh curd, King of Dhamma, omniscient Losandrapa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me, on a lion throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit for my mind of faith, please abide for 100 yawns to spread the teachings. Your holy mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanations is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you who are meaningful to see, hear, and remember, I prostrate. Pleasing drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, lice, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated, I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I have collected from beginningless time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age, and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the 8 worldly concerns. Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy gurus, from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losandrapa's teachings to shine forever. Saji Burki Chuji Metok Tramri Rablingshi Nidegempadi Sangejindu Miteua Hidrokunamdak Shilaju Basho. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his 2 sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losandrapa, who had a morality of eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of 2 stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and their imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. Now we recite 5-line Miktsema 3 times. Migme tsewe tenchen chen rezi, drime gempe wampo jampel yang, dupo malu jonze stawenda, ganchen gepe tsungen tsong kapa, lo sandrape shabla soade. Migme tsewe tenchen chen rezi, drime gempe wampo jampel yang, dupo malu jonze stawenda, Ganchen gepe tsungen tsongkapa, lo sandrape shabla soade. Migme tsewe tenchen chen rezi, drime gempe wampo jampel yang, dupo malu jonze sawenda, ganchen gepe tsungen tsongkapa, lo sandrape shabla soade. And a prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge. And for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in a glory for fortunate disciples.
Sangye Chedang Tsogi Chonum La Changchu Bardu Dami Gyabsun Chi Dagi Chushi Yeband Dagi Drolam Benshi Sangye Drubar Sho Sangye Chedang Tsogi Chonum La Changchu Bardu Dami Gyabsun Chi Dagi Chushi Yeband Dagi Drolam Benshi Sangye Drubar Sho Sangye Chedang Tsoji Chonum La Changju Bardu Dan Gyabsun Dagi Chushi Yeban Dagi Drolam Benshi Sangye Drubar Sho Kangi Tuzini Zone Tawa Tamje Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Denze Kwadam Dela Changze Lo Namo Lhaye Kedan Lodan Nujin Ke Chupon Dana Mi Kendam Rawa Kunji Janam Chizam Tamji Kedu Dagi Chuden To. Good morning, everyone. Shabadelegi.
A big chair or a big cushion?
그래서 나는 사마 미려왔어. 그러 미. 먼저 미기 생일로 시험인데 아니 맛이 된 거. 미 생일에서 그 야gar 개버속 좀 된데 진주 그때 밴드다 속어 아니 송인데 아니 미싱인데 아니 맛이 된 거와
Mashi dön koaseke dön tempo dön drabo. Mashi
맛이 왔나
hamago.
깨제시마
Keshe.
깨제시마 아니 된다 하공에들이야 아니 미세고레스
All of us, we are humans, and we possess the specific characteristics of humans, which which include being able to speak and to understand the words that are said. And this is not something only that we know, but this was stated by the Buddha and the great Pandits from ancient Indian monasteries.
미 진짜 던루직 마무지 깔라시살 쭉 들어거라서라 먼저 미디 깜바니 쭉 들어거라서 깜바니 살 쭉. 근데 깜바니 쭉 들어게 남지 촉 약슈드 소리스나 당한주 추억 통이 시거다 난추랑 시샤진 시거레스라 야 넘버 많이 받든지 임바나 아니 사무실에 당고 말했어 강이 남지 초디 아니 산지 좀 된데레스 깜바니 쭉 들어게 난게다 약슈디 아니 좀 된데레스 소요레스.
And in terms of way of moving, way of going from place to place. With animals, we see they move in a variety of different ways. Some walk, some fly, some swim, or usually to get their food. For human beings, we only have one natural way of movement, which is that of walking. So amongst beings who can walk, then from the Buddhist perspective, there's an expression that says the supreme amongst those on two legs is the Buddha, the founder teacher of the Buddha Dharma.
디준생 가르레스라. 디주 삼당고에 빼 계신 분 있어요. 삼에 땅바에는 삼 땅지 여바치. 다좀된 데디 깜바니 살준 정행 미직 차고라스. 나란서 깜바니 살준 정행 미직 차고라스. 아니 촉망부지네. 아니 좀된 데든 톰바치. 차고 이내야 촉망부지네. 먼저 좀된 데기다. 가르쳐왔다. 까메송당 아니 삼로당당 근데 망부 신간주 녀구여 말했어. 녀투구여 말했어. 인생 간절히 개버트 파버레스.
Tisko Tomso. Mini accompany Jörgen Angnolang, also mi Jöre. Deni chok di yaksha mampo Jöre. Mi Nangnola yaksha yapo ya.
gonda. 좀된 디아 깜바니 주는 정의레스. 난주 깜바니 주는 로고레스. 난주 총망부차네. 망부차네 난주 찍바레스. 좀된 데는 자오요레스. 이내 난주 좀된 데라야 난주 학비 캐치 망부치. 난주 디 좀된 데라 유여비 캐치 망부치 난주는 상거요 말아왔어. 인자 좀된 데 난주를 개발도 파고 차고레스.
아, 되네 디사보.
다시.
We, of course, as human beings, we have two legs. So we, in the ancient texts, they use this term bipeds. So this is what Geshe is referring to, those on two legs. So amongst beings on two legs, we'll find we'll find all human beings. And amongst human beings, the Buddha is said to be supreme. And this certainly would be the view amongst Buddhists. So the first point here is that we share many characteristics with the Buddha because we are human beings, we walk around on 2 legs and so forth. So we share many characteristics with the Buddha, but the Buddha is supreme when compared to us ordinary human beings because he has perfected so many incredible qualities, or perfected all good qualities in terms of his speech and his mind and so forth. That's all.
Yeah, careers laundy. 좀된 딜라야 남주 하장기 아니 셰럽 캐버드 파워치. 로 셰럽 하장기 셰럽 야부치다. 아니 잠지 세위 somebody 아니 오니 지 간주 즉 소차 순라질이야 때바이나 직바 직장기 따토야기 제와 캐버진지 요레스 간지 제와당 잠바당 셰럽 캐버드 파워치 이거 반사 아니 좀 된데 간솔리 캐버드 파워레스 딘딜라고 하사레스.
We take the variety of qualities that a Buddha has that far exceeds ours. We can point to the primary ones being his exalted wisdom, his remarkable wisdom that is incomparable to our own intelligence. In fact, his wisdom has been developed to the point of having a clear omniscience. Moreover, his love and compassion is incomparable to the love and compassion that we have. And his love and compassion is based on a flawless impartiality, whereby he loves each being equally. He holds each being as dear and precious equally. He doesn't have a more compassionate attitude for some groups than for others, but being based on flawless impartiality, his love and compassion directed to all beings is faultless itself. So it's in particular amongst the many incredible qualities that the Buddha has that exceed our own, we can point to his wisdom, his love, and compassion as making him such an extraordinary being. That's all.
The Dinza jumped into the Ganzoli Keppard Pawainza, and me Mambu Jikirata, Chicken Mambu, the chicken in Union, the Zambulingi me Tangal Sevana, Union Perez, Penanganzo Tawaching, Aneching, and D Jelaya Chick Nan, Jomden Dig, Tachi Lavja Chimachia, and Yamsuling, Rigdi, Pin Union Ravasra. The D, and it jumped in the Nanshin Chickens. Tendang Omadi, Jomden Dig Jesu Jugins, Jomden the Nanshin Chickens, and the Kellen Chichin, the Trawachi, Aneche, and Nambachi, Tenda di Dichagiosares.
Of course, as we know, a huge number, many billions of human beings in our world. And amongst them, we can divide them in varying ways. So if we divide those into the group of Buddhists, those who are followers of the Buddha, this suddenly becomes from this large number of human beings, a very small segment. And within this small segment who identify as followers of the Buddha, there will be those who are ordained as nuns or monks, and those who are non-ordained, but who all have in common, they are followers of the Buddha. That's all.
Terda dice ondige ani chomde dige digres keran ngi jesron dige ngi jinju chebalaya keran zolaya kelen tamja tindi labja tindi yonguyores labja chi ondi keran kelen pena kelen rumba mambuchi pena ani sodar ki dongbala soba ani chanjusim bi domba ani sanga ki domba o dindige ani chi rumba mambuchi kelen cheni ani nyamni di chen lebaina ani Nig Samla Nanshingi Tsedi, Cananzolaya, Yong Tugres. O Jomden Digi, Tachi Tusam Sheda Nanshinji, Yongyagi Chedu, Lamden Damasun Nanganzolaya, Ani Pigi Labasung Nangi, Sutrum Lava Delaya, Ani Sosu Tabi Sutrum, Chanjusimbi Sutrum, Sangagi Sutrum, Domba Sedi, Dinandos, Ra.
The Buddha, when addressing those who followed him, those who want to follow in his footsteps, those who want to follow in his footsteps, he said, the way that I can help you is by sharing my knowledge with you. And in this way, by you then cultivating it within, you are following in my steps, my footsteps, in the sense of cultivating inner qualities that will eventually become no different from my own. And so I can illuminate the path for you in how to radically transform your mind and develop your own exalted wisdom, your own omniscient consciousness. And for example, by cultivating the ethical restraint, restraining your mind. And there are varying levels of commitment one can apply. There are the ethical restraint of receiving and living in accordance of the vows of individual liberation, or that of receiving the vows of the bodhisattva and living within those vows, or receiving the vows of secret mantra and living within those vows. And depending on your level of enthusiasm or determination, you, my followers, can accept any number of these, 1, 2, or 3 sets of trainings to cultivate within. And in this way, you'll be following in my footsteps in the sense of cultivating inner qualities that will become no different from my own. That's all.
Terda, pena dombi rig nyamne cheval tene, ani chomden di tugilo yebigi, sewaninji chembo seti. And di yungu yasares. Pena anzo sodar ki dombi ki nange rig tambo di genying domba tawich. Chajawana, genying domba ki sonja tambo di sok chwe panya teres. Ra shengi, sok cha shengi, kanji sok den shengi, sok la ya neba mechewati. Ra tambo teres. Ra digi shen la ya ta nötsig nangi, nötsig cheshu di shengi sok cheba dili lagi shen la ya nötsig chejin raya marwas. Di tambo kaya son yores, shen la neba cheyat.
Of these differing types of vows, individual liberation, bodhisattva, and secret mantra, the very heart of them, the very essence of them, is love and compassion. So let's take the one level of vows, those of the individual liberation for the non-ordained. The very first vow is not to kill, not to express that differently than to show its relationship with love and compassion. Not killing means not taking what others value most, their own life. Do not kill others. Do not take from them what they value most. Do not harm them in that way. So thereby we can see the very entry-level vow, if I can express it like that of not killing, that we see within there the basis, the very heart of love and compassion, expressed in do not kill. That's all.
소야를 다 루츠고라 다 루츠야 기체도 아니 차진 약슈디 롱주 자게연자 롱주를 내버 땅바이나 롱주 하고라라 롱주를 내버 땅바이나 아니 류를 내버 용거라 류속 류의 속 소야래야 가진 치기어라스 된자 롱주를 내버 마시와 셴기 롱주 베나 딱 마진렘 빵야트 꼬먹고야트 셴그 롱주 트라야디 아니 니바지어레스 셴그 롱주래 네버 마당.
And the second vow is not to steal, not to steal the resources of others. This too has as its very heart love and compassion, because what beings value most is their own life. But in order to sustain their life, they also need a variety of resources. So if one steals from another, one is not only taking what they value and hold precious, what they rely on, but one is taking perhaps their sustenance, what they require in order to sustain their life, or at the very least to live a life of some comfort. So therefore, again, with this basis of love and compassion, the second vow that the Buddha gave his students was, do not steal from others. That's all.
Tadini somebody so the same years same the shenlaya and the same chevana hajang semla and titsugan has chagaras shenlara nugras ani chi loyam la soba penata chi re shengi sadala sobalaya ani tus Trushin Drawina, That Trukbalaya, that Kanji never chimbu shoe chagoras or disonores.
So the third vow that the Buddha gave was not to engage in sexual misconduct, from the most egregious of rape down to subtler levels. Again, because this harms others. This harms others. There's assault on the body, and not just the body, but the very being of another person. This causes immense distress. So therefore, as with the previous two vows, that the third, that of do not engage in sexual misconduct, this has as its very basis love and compassion. Do not harm others. That's all.
Tadi to Domjana, Luke Tony Karangi Shanlaya, never chesa goche shudodi, Sorchaba, Majimalamba, Mazamachoba Sumdi, Luke Tony, Shanlaya, never chesa godo teachavanza, di Kaya the song does, Tomati, Luke Tony, Shanlaya, never chiati, good tisum, never the Kagoyaji, song yours.
These first three vows that the Buddha gave, they explicitly, by accepting the vows, you explicitly promise not to harm the body of others through killing, stealing, or sexual misconduct. When one accepts these vows, one is making the commitment not to harm the body of others in this way. That's all.
In the Nagwani, Shanla never cheer county, Shanla never cheer county, and June Chama six of some ra June Shene Shanla and Gogor Tambaina Digma songs. Ani Chama Shene Padre Chicks, Sudro Chicks and me Paralia, Tuxin Gayati, Hajang Tabku ra on the Tenny Tangakel ra Ngakel Gadget Tenda maybe Sigma Shavana, Anzu Mitsedi, Rimbuyo Mare, Mitsitundore. Mazidi Nangolaya, Chava Kachimbu Drogoya, Rigmambu Shuji Yungore, Tutsu, Ani Laya, Tang Gorgin Chigiorasra, Kaja Tenda Mabambu Sheni, Ani Tuzu Tanshavana, Tuzu Gorgin Chiganza, Tisum de Niberto, Ani Chigmans, Kellen Chigogres, Rachom de Jinju Chivalaya, Tigogdasra.
The commitments that the Buddha guided his students to make were some included. There was physical restraints, where so as not to bring harm to others, to the body of others. But he guided his students to accept verbal constraints, whereby through their speech they do not bring harm to others. So these are often presented as a fourfold division, where one should not lie to others, deceive others, that one should restrain from harming them in this way. Secondly, that of divisive speech, where those who are in harmony, one creates conflict and division between them, or even those who have conflict, one exacerbates that. So the Buddha guided his students, his followers, not to engage in such speech. And thirdly, not to engage in harsh speech, where one speaks in a coarse manner which causes pain to others. And fourthly, to even abandon purposeless speech without any great purpose or meaning. Because the fault of purposeless speech is that, or speech without purpose, is that it serves to consume so much time and mental energy, whereby one ends up wasting one's life, not fulfilling one's potential. So this was also how the Buddha guided those who consider themselves to be his followers to follow in his footsteps and not bring harm to others through speech in these ways. That's all.
Any the Shanlaya Nusum Jangna Ra Susu Benangaransta and Manchiaji Susun Deba Machon Baina, Susun Deba the Mountain Baina, and me Pasho Madelia, no Chiach, never Tanyachiki, Kolon Kenny, Chawachigi Di Sawanin Rungio Mares, Jomden Digi, and he took the Sawanin Mentumbachi, Tinza, and he Nasim Nusum Loctas. Sam Gutoni, Tajik Shanlaya, never yongsa kodo di nasim nesum lokta sum chagores. Tisum kagores.
The Buddha not only encourages students to cultivate behavior that doesn't harm others physically or through speech, but also guided his followers to restrain their mind from thinking in ways which also cause harm. And these are usually presented in a threefold division: covetousness, malice or harmful intent, and wrong views. These tend to arise within us when things go in a way that's not in accordance with our views, or not in accordance with our wishes. So here the Buddha advised his followers to abandon covetousness, malice, and wrong views. That's all.
Diri ta tinza yakbu samdanaro ta nganzo tyenko wa inza mashi tyenko chikchile ya Geshe ni ani nyen shingu yobata ani Geshe di tyenda kari imbati samlo tang shingu yobata me inza di samlo tang go wasare sra mashi tyenko ya tyenda di samlo tang shimba je di laglen tar tungin jimba no tang ngone michago res ro susu lu nga yiksum go ne shenla ya never saw any matamach. Never saw any machiwach, chetuana. That jumped in the jinju castle, that yeah, that didn't sugars, that jumped in the jinju, jumped in the getu in Salamata, love chogors, Nima dinis only, Kerang Yamne ditch to win Nimon, can jump in the gita, jinju chagores. Jinju, that make jinju nang that any. Andan that tamadere dasra ya chagi telelego mardasra.
As human beings, we have the capacity to hear this guidance and not just hear it, but also understand it, and not just understand it, but to think deeply about the validity of this advice or not. We can think about, for example, even that of purposeless speech. We can come to recognize how that just wastes so much time and energy. Moreover, we can think through all of these 10 that I've mentioned, the 3 to do with physical harm, 4 with verbal harm, and 3 with mental harm. We can recognize how by acting in these ways, we do bring harm to others directly and indirectly, even to ourselves. And thereby, we can think, by thinking deeply, we can develop the determination not to harm others. And this is the practice of ethics. So what the Buddha is advising is, if you want to be my follower, in other words, if you want to follow in my footsteps and develop the same good qualities that I have, then this is what you need to do. You need to refrain from harming others sincerely in the way that I'm guiding here. That's all.
The Jomden dig to Gilaya, 7 inch chamber set, yours. The D Yongelaya, Shenla never much of Zamgi, and it's 7 inch D, get to your mares. That D Yongelaya, Chanjusem Dombalenko dos. The Chanjusem Domba, Tanganzumamuji, Chanjusem Dombalayora, that Lama Givishin is some Gimiki Dulaya, Tiksanga, Chesamu to the Shiondi, and it Piggy, that gaining Dombatsam Mase, Chanjusem Dombalenko yours. 다 잔주심비 domballeondi 잔주심비 dombenangolaya zoji karuarsadi zawa nini shen yawa torwiki samlo dike chogoyo mares. The
very heart essence of the Buddha's teachings, the guidance that he has given us, is that of great compassion. And if we thereby engage in harmful conduct, anything that brings harm to others, this then is contradictory to the very essence of the Buddha's teachings. Recognizing this and wanting to develop ever greater compassion within oneself, and thereby be ever more compassionate and wise in our interactions with others, many will choose to receive the bodhisattva vows. And I imagine many of you listening to this teaching have received bodhisattva vows, either on their own or within a tantric initiation. And whenever one receives bodhisattva vows, they can only be received. Let's rephrase that. When bodhisattva vows can only be received if there is already a basis of having taken individual liberation vows, so the vows of the ordained or non-ordained, such as those that I've just been mentioning. So that is the very basis. Then on top of that, if one wants to aid one's development of compassion, one may choose to receive the bodhisattva vows. And the bodhisattva vows are characterized by restraining one's mind from, even on this mental level, from engaging in ways that are contradictory to a compassionate attitude towards others, or to express it differently, restraining one's mind from coming under the influence of any harmful thoughts directed towards others. That's all.
Chomden digi tsewegi siwondi, chomden digi karso taji shatani chebigi, ani rangi pudang, ani korang la ya taji nganzu midamasu mitse kambo la ya neba tandingi, ani lenjin se joras, ti lenjin se gi, du lenjin se mi jora.
Michik, migiming.
Lenjin.
Lenjin.
Lenjin se mingri.
Ali, migiming, tiso.
Tiga katui na chomden delay, never janjang chomden delay, tato da magawa, and jansam janjang cheding mijora. Any Casa chomden digi, any pujigora, chomden di sang maji con travel maji, chomden delay, pujigora. Tingi let down digi, save somebody chick by chigyang, sick to gores. Korang bullets with 7 on shingi. Korang never cheating in Linjilaya, Takarangi, and it's every somebody sick to or Chanyum sick to what is. Or Dindi, it's ever the young Yalaya, and it Chanju Simbi Domba Sujan to Masombaina, and it's every somebody, and John Dig 2 Yulu, it's every somebody Shinji, you won't see your maris.
Double gossip. The very heart of the Buddha's teachings is founded on love and compassion. When one looks at the biography of the Buddha, one sees that he had a relative, Devadatta, who continuously criticized the Buddha, complained to and about the Buddha, and made many problems directed towards the Buddha. He was motivated by many things, in particular jealousy. And Buddha also, so that's one person, Devadatta. The Buddha, before he ordained, he was a prince, and he was married, and he had a child, a son, Rahula. So taking these two beings, his dear child, his only child, Rahula, and his relative, Devadatta, who complained and criticized and just made problems towards the Buddha's attitude towards both of them was equal. He held each equally dear in his heart. There was no sense of being closer to, for example, his own son, as opposed to this person who kept making problems in his life. He held them both equally dear. So this basis of impartiality or equanimity is essential to actually develop bodhicitta and engage in the actions of a bodhisattva. This basis of impartiality towards all beings has to be developed. That's all.
Tadi tanganzula tiwara does. Chomden digi korangi pudang korang laya data dingi mini laya sevi samba chikpataya di ani karres ro chomden digi namjuk mandangware wana chomden di kukbare karres mare wasro chomden di kukba mare chomden di namjuk mandangwa mare chomden digi chikpata gores chikpata thugores namjuk put chom thoni chikpata thugores kukba mainza chikpata thugores ta nganju tamado karsna nganju namjuk mandangwa nganju tsevi sambati ani ge mandangwa dindri chani nganju tamato re mato nganju namju chomden den de namju jiyobada tsevi samba jobana yacha yadam chikpata thugores.
Hearing this and about the Buddha, how he held his dear son as equally close to this person who kept making problems in his life, complaining and criticizing and so forth. We hear that he held each equally dear, that he loved each equally. This sounds really quite, perhaps remarkable, but perhaps quite bizarre. And one may think, how is this even possible? Was he just like ignorant, confused? Did he not perhaps recognize his son as his son? Did he just not know that was his child? Or did he not know that Devadatta was the person creating all the problems in his life? So in this way, he was ignorant or confused? Or was he just naive? We may think like this. But the reality is it was through the Buddha's incredible wisdom that he could develop such an impartial attitude towards both. For us, we cannot recognize this so easily because our wisdom, our love, our compassion is still really limited. And therefore, to be able to sincerely recognize, to honestly recognize how it's possible to love one's enemy as much as one's child, this just seems quite unbelievable because we are so far from having developed our own good qualities to such an extent. That's okay.
Yeah, be we naturally some down the Chibuchagores, Suzu Chatanichi put down, Susula Mugang dining with tea, and Tendang Omalaya, Devatan, Dungan Mundeva, Susu Nancy Chibuchigan Chagoras. Jumped in the deep teach much is Sigiobanza, Dungar Munding Angelaya, Dunga Majoroch and the Chimaro, Yamba D. Dungar Munding Angelaya, Dungar Narondi, that did Dunga that and the Chimaro, Yambi, Ogiana, that did jump the dig 2 years with Zewateries. Nanzula D on to your maras, Nanzula Narangi Moshiba, Narangi Trobo, Narangi Sazan, Narangi Pudu in Bichani, and Zewa Yamato, Piggy Dungar Munding Angelaya, Dungar Jiyungu, that deep so the chickball, that deep marshal in the Chimaro Yambi sound the Nanzula Yomaras. Jump then the Dio Banza, and the Rangi put down, Ranilaya, Dadang in Niga, and it Dungar Mundevata, Devan Deva, Chickinza, kept Sawan in Mevanza, and it saved somebody kept me watching 6 hours. Did Namjuk Tony, they only 6 hours.
The way the Buddha came to be such a remarkable being was through lifetimes of training his mind. So let's think then how he would have done this. Buddha came to recognize the way that, so the being who was to become the Buddha, when he was training his mind, he came to recognize that we divide beings into varying categories. In general, we'd say those that we hold as near and dear. Then there are those that we repel, we dislike them. And there are those that we are indifferent towards. But the Buddha came to see that all of them at a fundamental level are the same. All of us at a fundamental level are the same in that we yearn for happiness, a happiness that's freed from even the slightest of problem or difficulty. The other differences that are more observable, these are superficial and they pass. But at a fundamental level, we are identical. And the Buddha didn't just merely understand this intellectually. He thought about it deeply, repeatedly over a sustained period so that it deeply transformed his mind. And this understanding of impartiality or equanimity is the very basis to cultivate love and compassion. When we look at ourselves, honestly, we can recognize that we are still very far from that. There are those that we hold as dear. There are those that we really dislike. And the vast majority of beings we are indifferent towards. Those that we hold as dear, we will do what we can to help them, to make their life happier. And when they achieve success, our heart is filled with joy, sincere joy. But those that we dislike, we certainly won't help them. And if they achieve some success, resentment may arise. maybe even a disappointment, wishing that they hadn't. And if they encounter problems, maybe we feel a bit of joy at that. And then the majority, we just largely ignore. So through using our intelligence, we can recognize where we are. We can understand how the Buddha became a Buddha. And through using our intelligence, not only can we recognize that, but we can transform ourselves. So therefore, the very basis for transforming ourselves is using our remarkable human intelligence. That's all.
And maybe several young years. In Namju, Lagura, Niangos at Zavilamains. Niangos at Zavilamains. The one Kazananga low Choksumne Tawachero. Tawachi on the Zavilama 10. Lami Kala Niengenera, Tawachero. Lo Choksumne, Tiri Lo Ngabchung Abshu Pardo. Nilami Kajanga Sin Lerata. Nilami Karisoma Dinyangremado. Ni Champagne the Chitanda in a young is Karza. Lalan Tariadi, Nilami Kashizon in Lalan Tarwana. Yasha Jatama. Lami Samaya Buddhisungdo. Ah, good Dujari, this Sungmunda. And a Jermuchegi, the song thing couldn't tell. Kaduinachi, Susavillamaina, Gematas, Tropopenzuina, Gematas, Mela Gematas, Ken Paina, Kyong Solaragres, the Sosolaragres. Piggy Miti, Gyunjin Sambaina, Gyunjin Sambi, Lord, the Sosu Gulalegro, Sosu Semnalaya. Mi pasho mi gyön tongi lodi sosu semna leondi semma giba chagores. Miti tugundi miti mirangi mado shemba kaimar ina tugundi sosu leya tsoa ma giba legdoas. Di gyön tabi lodi toni leere mado miti toni lego mares. Yönden tatu bayna sosu gegen la yönden tatu bayna teba gigore mila yönden tatu bayna chobo chagore. Sasan Chagore, Dichagora, Kyante by no Tarin Rogora, Tinza, and a gigging Kaduso, on the Tanigi, Hachang Labchin Redosra. Kanching on the Deogori, Kibu Gori, so Sam Redosra, Sam Kibu, leg with Chantona, Kibu Yungore, Malay with Chantona, and Magiva Legora, Tiras.
When one hears the teachings of the Buddha, because of this remarkable human intelligence that we have, it doesn't remain as mere sound arising in our ears, but we can understand the meaning of what is being said. And through reflecting on that meaning, using our intelligence further, we can come to recognize the truth, the validity in those teachings. So in my case, I've been ordained more than 30 years now, and I've been guided by remarkable teachers. And whilst I've heard many people saying many things, my focus has been on what my teachers are saying. And I've paid most of my attention, most of my emphasis has been on what they have been saying. And I've also been watching how they live their life, see them as a role model and example. And I see the teachings and the behavior as being completely in accordance, harmony. And they never criticize others, blame others. In fact, and just like with Lama Tsongkhapa and his teachings, also says, do not look at the faults of others. If you, in your mind, you're criticizing others, you're focusing on their faults, complaining about others, who is suffering? It's only you. It's only you. And moreover, by, in your mind, complaining about others, criticizing others, or perhaps in your speech, but what it certainly does do is lead to a distance, a separation between you and those you're criticizing. How can you be in harmony with them when in your mind you've got this record playing of what they did and what they said and so forth. So the harm comes to you. And unless one expresses this, the other person may be completely oblivious to your thoughts. They may be in a different part of your city or country or world. So they have no idea what's going on with you. But in your mind, you're creating pain and suffering, which is having no impact on them. And if you think about the validity or if you think about how we all want to experience happiness, this is achieved mainly through the way we think, through the material world, through possessions and the physical world. This has an impact on us for sure, happiness or unhappiness, but it primarily comes from how we think. So if we're complaining like that, we just suffer. We experience ever more unhappiness. But on the other side, our teachers advise us, rather, don't focus on the faults of others. Focus on their good qualities. And if you focus on their good qualities, and it's someone, for example, one spiritual teacher, one accumulates great merit. And if it's a fellow ordinary person and one in your mind, you're focusing on their qualities, you'll be feeling, you'll be developing a good connection with them. You'll be feeling good about them solely through focusing on their good qualities rather than on their faults. And thereby, when you engage with them, you are much more likely to develop a harmonious relationship with them through having focused on their good qualities. Whereas if one focuses on their faults, one is not going to develop a good relationship with them. So therefore, benefit follows by focusing on the good qualities of others, and only faults follow by focusing on the faults of others. Again, we all want to be happy, and we don't want to suffer. And this comes primarily through our way of thinking. So take this guidance and don't complain and criticize, focusing on the faults of others. Rather let that go and focus on their good qualities. That's all.
당이 쇼기 딱봐 자오름지 깔라버린 닝거라. 자오름지 더 닌자 sar카시질래 가르송송슬라운데. 야미 고트기어라. 마우츠동 마우츠동스 미시나사고 저아 당고 여마르데 미츠즈 마우츠동스 민드 콘나 미시나사고 찌거라. 자오름지 콩이 초버레스. ngani tuundi kongalaya shatachin ani dalilama chu tugritas chu tu
ge hakmacho ge kola geldu dene
ani korang I chobores an korang ngala number sanji chu yoro chu tugres chu chin yabu zani no tugres segdos mazudon kol dilavsons yavrumshik
그렇죠.
임바 있느야 다다로질라 마우스도 여봐나 아니 이 콜라야 아니 게제시 진 땡땡이 다다 마우스도 여나 이거 넘발라스 유튜브사레스 여러분께 디스근더스라
As I've mentioned previously, that I listen to His Holiness's teachings every morning, and His Holiness sometimes recounts how when we hear the name Mao Zedong, for many of us, fear arises merely through hearing this name. And for most people, they've never met him. He's long deceased and they've never met him. But merely hearing this name, negativity arises within. But if I'm honest, this is His Holiness talking, but if I'm honest, I see him as my friend. I still recall him saying directly to me, Buddhism is poison. But I know that if we had the opportunity for much more interaction, the Dharma could have had a positive impact on his mind, and he may well have even turned out as a Buddhist. So this I've heard His Holiness say.
Tsultrim goge Geshe captain nichin tanda part tangi jawr 1987
to say.
yeah ne tanda part tangi jawrumji je jawrumji sonju kaddu samdanar kaddu nyambana jawrumji tsawa nini ani Mao Zedong la ya khondru sag mondos 자원이 control 매바 땅에 야차 야타마 랍투고스 임바에는 그 제당 망부진 드마송스 드리그문도 디리하고 말했어 근데 순거레스 라 난저기 제당이 자왔다 랑기 집이 자왔다 미니모드 미디 집이 자왔다 미니드 로가라와스 그 자와 독자 집이 전에 곧 나고 나지 않고 독자리 공이 좁은 말이 공 아마가스레스 라바이나 디 노르고요사레스 근데 겨울문지 디 싸워니 있는 것만도스 대나시 좀 된데 디 싸워니 있는 것만도스
There's a really important point within this. So I've been listening to His Holiness teaching since 1987 until now. And in all these teachings and talks, I've never once seen or heard His Holiness express any form of anger towards Mao Zedong. Never once. He certainly has said many times he doesn't agree with Mao's views nor his behavior. So His Holiness may criticize the views of Mao or the behavior, the activities of Mao, but never the person. This is crucial. His Holiness shows that he has realized that the person is not the views of the person and is not the person. The behavior of the person is also not the person. Maybe to express this in better English. The views of a person does not define who that person is. The behavior of a person does not define who a person is. The person is not their views. The person is not their behavior. And I see how His Holiness clearly has realized this and is guided by this understanding, lives in accordance with this understanding. And this too is something that Buddha Shakyamuni taught and lived in accordance with. That's
대딘자 간지 간주기 가르쳐다 셴라 셴야워 털바이나 셴야워 털바이나 나도지기 셴야워 털바이나 경디 나랑 라고레스 나랑 규기 아니 잠직 삼로 공부를 로얄이야 뉴거레스 나랑 규기 잔주스미 동발이야 뉴거레스 대 나신기 지 부장을 몰라야 지 심전 탐제라야 지 펜도 제동행기 다 미지 책임 냠비 근데 담제줘라 텔라 뉴거레스 로 간지 아니 간조 샘디 아니 더차 셰당 나르게 착도라 소비 자원도 curse비 제라 아니 경라야디 소소임바디 하고고도 하스라 디 하고와이나 야자 야담 좀 된디 진주 제발이야 아니 레라드라사레스 난추 냠는 치야데 레라드라사레스 비기 미 파쇼메 제당 레당 가르 통바이나야 코 아니 가서 남규 디 토니 아니 수수 샘디 교왔다 마투야지 수수 샘디 콘주 샤원도 마키와 수수 샘디 차도 샤원도 마키와지 땡데 아니 샘 수수 샘디 수수 다고잔 데투사레스 라당한조 미나 땡지지 고고도 하서라 소소소 비게게 아니 축샘 통인지 람상 콘주 샤원도 견도 마임바 람상 베 차도 샤원도 견도 마임바 원에지 미창부 아니 템부치 소토바나 미참아 가오치 그러서라 근데 겨울무질 미참아 가오치 가르스나 고 참부 장장지 우연내주시 잠세다 아니 딘지 아니 손 로데디 미랑신 가고라서라
if when thoughts criticizing others, blaming others, disparaging others, when they arise, if we dwell with those, give them energy, follow those, it's only ourselves that are harmed. So if we're walking around complaining and criticizing about a situation or a person, who suffers? Only us. At that time, is our mind at peace? Is our mind happy? Not at all. And not only when we follow such harmful thoughts, do we suffer at that moment, but our longed for generation of love, of genuine love and genuine compassion, this is harmed. So too are our bodhisattva vows. For as long as we remain guided by afflictions such as attachment, anger, pride, and jealousy, we will only suffer. We will suffer because they make us unhappy then and there, and they prevent our generation of wholesome minds such as love, compassion, and wisdom. However, to the extent that we strive to gain dominance over these minds, to take control over our own mind, to that extent that we can do this, it will become ever easier to successfully train, to develop the teachings of the Buddha within our own minds. It's the presence, but presence in particular in the sense of their dominance, our following of these afflictions, that make it so difficult for us to transform our mind. But by gaining control over our own mind, restraining our own mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions, then it becomes so much easier to develop good qualities within. And the results will be immediately, we are happier, we are at more peace. Our relationships with others will reflect this, because they will pick up that we are trustworthy, we are reliable, we are not in competition with them, we're not going to criticize them or hurt them directly or indirectly. So we'll develop good relationships with others, just like we see with His Holiness. Whomever meets him is filled with joy. For so many of us, just hearing his name or calling him to mind fills us with joy, because we know he is reliable, he is trustworthy, because of his remarkable mind. So to the extent that we restrain our mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions, we will be able to successfully develop the good qualities of the Buddha Dharma within. That's okay.
Ani susu longba short cheni mi longba la ya chue yong ro ta capture yong ro imba ina ya capture leba ina ya semi shivi gi lam chamje dang o dindi to ni ani tawa di song cheni ani zambali nang la ya chi phe on di ge tanda zambali khorang ni gyawrong mo chi se de mi tsenden ji la ya zigor tsenden ji la zigor kansna di chamje gi lam le de ni chong wa ro ani modu chi gi 아니 막당 천자다 저수 참마 쉬우지 열대네야 단다 잠블린 나올래 모두실라디 아카 섬대지 차야디 아니 세비기 남라텐 공조다 샤당다 아니 차도라 소비기 아니 남라텐이 뒤총버려왔어 디낭신기 비나 아니 야가르기 마 겐디셋 겐디지 Samba Chambon Gendiji said, Semi Shivi Tadula Deni, any Gaga Jacob Chimbudi, Semi Shivi Utik Chavarosra, Susu Lurtanchin, Susu Lurtani, Susu Tam the Nyanda, the Togu Thompson Yons of Lurtani, any Jacob Chid Legacy on Digi, any Semi Shivi one with the Charas Ra. Tantangan di Karsa. Nima Chongson, Zonganani, and the gate Tabadam the Saison, Pombuja, Saddam House, Saddam House, Saddam House,
the Gaga
Yagamari, and Afghanistan, Saddam House said you are get down the Saison.
There
and the Koran Kamba, the bear massive, and the Zigpush shoes, the Segda. That be ranchins in Chichin. Any two sion the Tamade, any Sagola, any Tanda Palingamundo Kashi Sachin, the education, Tamadel, any Shizon, the Carre, any Dansam, the Chagdo, the Narge, the Soviet Wangi, and Tamasoso, Jacobi, Jacob Jomutu Amase, Rani Gomotin Chadu, that's right. Kanji D. 아니 간지 뉴문라야 로 뉴문라야 갭 땜바이나 뉴문라야 땜바이나 트럭 땜바이나 디차고레스 아니 장바다 자바다 장주sem 남주기 셔럽라야 아니 트럭 땜바이나 야부차기도 딩무여ren도스라 인생 간주 메인자 인칭민지기 아니 디냠닌 제바나 아니 간주 밀레기비타 아니 고든 약슈디 디인사레스
When we observe His Holiness, when we look at how He has lived His life, and we take care, particularly the years that we have known Him or been observing Him from a little distance, we can see He really is a simple monk, and He lives perfectly in accordance with the Buddha's teachings. He lost his country. He became a refugee. But through his remarkable love, compassion, and wisdom, he's actually created or attained an even bigger home in the sense that, from his perspective, the whole world is like his family. The entire world now, not just Tibet, is his home. The entire world and the beings therein are his family. And we can see how beings throughout the world, people throughout the world, relate to him in really quite a special, unique way, because he is such a unique being. And over the decades that we've been able to observe him, read his works, hear his teachings and his talks, we have seen how he always acts and speaks in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha. He never advocates violence or aggression, and he never even takes an aggressive stance towards those causing grave harm in the world. So even those who start warfare, engage in warfare, take life, harm beings in unimaginable manners, His Holiness doesn't show them any aggression at all, but only care, kindness. And if we take two now deceased historical figures, take first Gandhiji. He was such a remarkable being, a guiding light in the bringing of India and the people of India together in a manner where his sole wish was for people to live together in harmony. He really seemed to be a embodiment of the four immeasurables. His focus was on bringing people together to live together, whomever they are on a superficial level, recognizing their inner sameness, their inner equality. He wanted all beings to live together in harmony. And even now, all these many decades later, he's held in such reverence and seen as a remarkable being in this world. Now we take another more recent historical figure, that of Saddam Hussein. So he wasn't guided by love and compassion. He wasn't guided by the mind that holds all beings as dear. He was really guided by his own afflictions, his own pride, his own arrogance, and his grasping at himself as being supremely dear. And we saw how his life ended, hiding in a hole and hung, killed publicly. And his beloved palace that he built, this expression of his pride, was looted and ransacked. He lost everything of value, his own life in a violent way, and all these cherished possessions. We see these two examples of someone who's living a meaningful life, guided by love and compassion, holding all beings as dear, and someone else with complete self-interest. See the difference in them. And from this example, we can see the benefits of developing genuine love and compassion based on impartiality, and to do so, to first gain dominance, control over our own mind, in particular over these afflictions, not being guided by our attachments, our self-interest, our pride, our jealousy, and our anger, but by gain control over our own mind, and thereby be able to develop and allow to flourish all our good qualities, such as love, compassion, and wisdom. This is something we can do. And this is something we need to do. That's all.
Adiri dinza kanji nganzolaya ani chamzegi samlo trialaya ani sonum sako go sares sonum sa kazin ningung rangrwa kazin ningung ngege tanda nagarjuna ki gumbuludu ki sonchik gumbuludu ki son tanda ta gyu korchire nga korki ani tebch loira kazin ningung rangrwa kazin ningung rangrwa dinang kar sondu sadi ani tenza chimbo pena tembikula soba choden la soba di yul khabar chen res tela chak sebaina sonum sagres ani sonum gutula teni ani nyumu ma dibgres nyumu nyong drogres docha sedanga gela soba nyong drogres an di dosola ya jamnyenji chanju semla soba kiagi ani kon pegres sonum gutula ten le tambo wege yul khabar chen la ya chatse ya choba pya pe kechim bores ro chita kong karson gores na nga gi ta chen thombu gi nyamneng gi korji songores inaya tedan nyamdo nganzu yul khabar chen la ya chatse ya choba pya kechim bores tindu songdo as ro ngombo ludu la sobege tinji nango go ya na nganzu de telekyang chegogra ta chegosra ro
Cultivating minds such as love and compassion leads to the accumulation of so much merit. And this aids our spiritual development, is essential for our spiritual development. In fact, yesterday afternoon, I was reading a text by Nagarjuna. And this text was one on secret mantra. And in there, Nagarjuna wrote that for us as beginners, but who aspire to become great practitioners, to develop remarkable qualities within, it's an incredibly skillful technique to make prostrations to and offerings to the representations of the Buddha's body, so statues, and the Buddha's mind, so stupas, and so forth. Because by doing so with sincere faith and with aspiration to develop all the good qualities of the Buddha Dharma within, one creates so much merit. And this merit is indispensable for two reasons. One, it aids the development of good qualities such as love and compassion, aids their development and flourishing. And secondly, it serves to weaken our afflictions, weaken these destructive emotions such as attachment, jealousy, and pride, which prevent the development of our good qualities. So in this text, by a remarkable being like Nagarjuna on secret mantra, this was the advice that he gave us to aid our development of the qualities of the path within. So coming from such a remarkable being, even in a context like secret mantra, this is something, therefore, we should apply ourselves to. That's all.
Ani gyawrumji kalabjila yarwa. Pese kaza shokire gyawrumji kalabjila ya karsungu dusladi. Sangi gi tukye munum sejora. Ani karso ta hachang nibachembures. Tukye munum gutogi manzo sangi kuchik pigi kuchra chunjun chik jeba imbayna ya. Sonam pagdu mebati. Sagres. Sangi gi ani ngi gi ani ku tongwa theba chik sambala soba kari chombayna ya. Ani tawada tamjen kimbi kumban ya toba shoosene tukye munum pet ani karsa da chik labu chiji nansha yawenza dindigi tola teni yungu yores nanzu kuching je toba tsamjiki sonum labu chi saandu gores yawaronji disungu dos ra.
As mentioned earlier, I listen to His Holiness's teachings every day, and the one this morning, he was speaking about the power of the Buddha's prayers. The independence on the quality of the mind, prayers have ever more strength. And the Buddha, of course, has a perfected mind. So therefore, his prayers, we can have confidence of great strength. And in his prayers, he made the aspiration that when beings those beings in future generations who cannot meet him in person, when they meet the representations of him, whether those are in the forms of statues or of stupas or of texts, whatever it may be, may they create so much merit, especially in dependence on their faith and other good qualities. Because the truth is, the reality of the situation is, to be able to encounter images of the Buddha, images, representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, that already, if one encounters them, one knows one has created great merit. And by doing so again, encountering them again, in particular, when it leads to a generation of faith within, this leads to incredible merit being accumulated. And His Holiness was saying this in the talk I was listening to this morning. That's okay.
아니 내 딩원이 있어라. 아니 간주다 로르기를 대바이나 춘종을 대바이나 아니 공부르르기에 단 남바산지비 추어 돌아야 깔리시 잡다스라 깔리시 잡다스 아니 공부르르기 다 초보 약부 쉬어진다 아니 잡부 대주 상보세 잡부 대주 상보는 공부르르기 초보랜다 게두그랜다 그 유치원보래다 공부를 가리 거는 초den거나 공부거나 가르거나 그것이한거다 쉬우지 제어라서 또 여러 가지 디송도 앞에 아니 그 지금 제바점 그 손을 나버시 싸도 그래서 여러 가지 디송도 디송과 시송기 당한저 니동 니슈니 진단다 벌도 아니 코비드 괜찮니 먼저 칠로를 테마도 이제 아니 여러 가지 섬종랑의 쉬운 송전나로 송준한테 간서 겨울은 섬종 제거다. 섬종은 용수 조바 tan가도 건데. 그 개공 개래 가능와 tan가 샴샤여라. 겨울은 가와 카코나야 고송투된 간자. 대난신 간서 신시에 담발라면 소름 붙이기. 섬샤나라야. 걔는서 하공에서 하고 그래. 용수 조바 고송투대로 가와 제바나 고송투대. 아니 가드이나 아니 손은 빠도메바 싹싹거린다. 아니 당한수 칸바나를 찍대 온디게 아니 고선 투데 뺑인용으로서 아니 누구도 zul아야 찍 천장자만다다 되니지 아니 소소기 아랑자만다서 지치니 간지 대차기야다 샤단기야다 공주기야기 잘라로 짱짱 득샤여서 딜리시는 간수다 냠내 치투고요 말아서 간수 코유 차는 냠내 치투고요 말 수수 상로 돈은 냠내 치투고요 말 간수 빼마서 봐 상로 약없이 마다나 간수 빼 냥가 차고 단 니네 양제 지 신이 깨와 제마 밀리게 빼마서 가보라 간수는 규탄다 싸고요 말아서 단 간수 라마나마서 가르치기도 가르는 것도 가르치 대난신치 가주 투두지 제발나 야자야다만 간주 멘트는 밀리기 왔자마서 아니 딘데비 좀 딘데기 추주 삼었던 제지는 냠내지도 신로바나 간주 깨와 가시 제라야 야자야다만 전주 삼바다 다좀 고모토야기 람가 여러 왔어 니송고도 왔어
What His Holiness was saying, really, it's the case. And when you think back to the accounts of great historical beings such as Nagarjuna, we recognize that they went through great challenges in order to become the remarkable beings that they were. It didn't just come easily. It wasn't handed to them. They had to strive to radically transform their mind. There's a story of how Nagarjuna, wherever he went, he was accompanied by a friend. Sorry, as a translator, I don't know the name, but he always this friend who was also a student of Nagarjuna's accompanied him everywhere. And there are accounts of how they went to pilgrimage places. They went to various statues and the like, making offerings everywhere they went, offerings, prostrations, and so forth. Because this remarkable being Nagarjuna knew that this was a skillful method to accumulate merit and was thereby guiding those who had faith and trust in him, such as the students, to accumulate merit in this way. And this was not only the case in historical times, but is the case now. If we think back to the pandemic, when we were largely confined at home, we were at the great fortune to be able then to have the time to watch His Holiness easily on our screens. And whenever we do, we can see that in the area surrounding His Holiness, there are perhaps immediately behind him images of the Buddha's body, statues and representations of the Buddha's mind, such as the stupa, and all around tankas as well. And why is that? Because merely by seeing them, virtuous thoughts are likely to rise in dependence on that, and thereby we accumulate merit. And Lama Zopa, of course, we know that this too was an example that he followed, how he practiced. Wherever he went, whenever one met him, he was in an environment surrounded by Buddha images or holy images, for the same reason, that by seeing these, independence on our own virtuous qualities, such as the mind of faith, further virtue is accumulated. We feel inspiration to cultivate virtuous minds within us, and so forth. So now I encourage you to, on the one hand, to look at those who are our guiding lights in the world and see what example they are setting for us to follow. And then look at your own life and see whether you are following that well or whether you could be doing so better. And so people in general, in their homes, maybe not so many Buddha images. But what's much more likely is they'll have other things around their home, not necessarily as in photographs, but as physical objects, which when seen lead to the rise of afflictions rather than virtuous minds. It could be alcohol, it could be weapons, things that they, for the reason of their own imprints, they find appealing to have on display. Then by seeing them, other minds arise, minds not of the side of virtue. And where this matters is that to attain a human rebirth, in particular a precious human rebirth, acquires a tremendous number of virtuous imprints. And it's difficult if one is not striving to accumulate causes to gain a desired result. So especially for those who are not making to fulfilling their potential, being surrounded by stimuli that is leading to the rise of afflictions rather than virtuous minds. This is something that we should look at addressing in our own lives. Because the reality of this situation is, to the extent that we strive to transform our minds, we will be able to do so. The great beings are living embodiments of this, or through their accounts in the biographies, we can recognize how they achieve greatness. So by us making effort now, what remains of this life, we can develop virtuous minds and reduce our afflictions and even develop paths within us which will aid from lifetime to lifetime our spiritual development and our generation thereby of actual bodhicitta and the attainment of freedom of suffering and even enlightenment. This depends though on how vigorously we apply ourselves to accumulating the causes of happiness. Let's look at that.
That dinza tanganzu lega khares landi pena nganzu tanganzu devel degyenza lomba dela saja del degyenza saja del yubigi ta so saja del yubita milaya pembigi ta lega chegoyadi ngara khadin disamgiyos ra nga desa delaya nga drosa delaya nge chi pentoya lega chegoya ta ngarangi the antambo lega the din but the ngunzin chigiyos ra tinza anzu ta sacha dela yubi milaya sonum sayachi nanchu gi nyamne yongya ya sonum goya di ani sangye dan jagar kheba dan lama chungka bada chi ta yongsu zoba gi gomba direndas ta sonum sayala ya ani gomba ludu gi songus nalola ya Kusung to the Layan Chobapia, Chatsiala Sobati, Sono Hajan Labuch Sagres. The Kusung to the Layan Chobapia, Chatsiadi, Sonum Sagayobana, Kusung to the Jishan to Wana, Telekan Sonum Labchaji Sagras. Dinzang Anzuda, and Kanga be, Kanga to any Mitsamagi Chashi land to Yach Bena, or Dindiji Chebana. And chitungu sonum singing the sagores. Ra, and the chitungu sonum de mena, and the tumungu sonum de sama to Guina, when the Lomban dig such a delay, tumungu sonum de sama to Guina, Lomban delaya, one each, and 최고 롬니 띵 사부 추야디 신는 깔래 가버레스. 신는 깔래 가버레스. 딘자 진퉁 그 소놈 사발이야. 참만 냠슈 지야지. 참만 전 소놈 사야지. 디 아니 디 케시주 샤고레스. 로. 딘딜 템비 땅안주지 나는데 가든 샹야로 소보 좀 된디 고 샹야로 소보 디리마도 미 칸사 게치 로. 수수 미 게베 체드 사원이니 상당면서 데발이야 가주스 데토게메 하고요 말아 nga lomba de le ke yo mar lomba din nang lo la ya nga la pinja singi chieme nami chieme ka ki me
na ko tom song die methodon de kolle mutene yanka song na die nieten chudok ma de yeni die nalanda panda de kolle yanka song na
di kunda shang yo ro nganzo di shang ya di ta lomba di che du shang bares lomba di mi che du shang bares 디 하고 그래서 롬바 디미 롬바 디 미참을 로기다 아니 데코라 gel려온 통데 아 야부도 삼성잖아 소놈지 싸더라 두진 미참을 로기 소놈지 싸더반 디 툴라테니 아니 롬바 델야 산지 좀된 디기다 직 추줄 사모디 라울로니 체사기 때니 야부치 소놈 델데니 드롭투 그래마도 소놈 메나 로 벤조 여바sam기 야차 야타면 드롭투 말했어
I've been living here in Australia for some years, and my sole purpose of being here, as I see it, is to benefit the people within the area or the region or the country in which I abide. This is my purpose of being here. So I see it as my responsibility to help all that whomever I can, to help them accumulate virtue. This is so important. Virtue, the accumulation of virtue is indispensable for all aspects of spiritual development. As mentioned earlier, through the accumulation of virtue, we weaken and eventually can overwhelm our afflictions, and we can strengthen and allow our virtuous minds to flourish. But moreover, virtue is required to aid the development of the Buddha Dharma in this country. So therefore, and as His Holiness mentioned and other great masters, by looking upon the representations of Buddha Shakyamuni and the great pandits of India, such as Nagarjuna, the great Tibetan masters, such as Lama Tsongkhapa, by looking upon their representations of their body, their speech, and the mind, and generating faith, merit is accumulated by making prostrations to or offerings to. Merit is accumulated, and this is a simple, a straightforward technique. It doesn't require extensive education to make a merit in this way. So, and it's really important to be able to fulfill the aspiration to make the Buddha Dharma easily accessible, and people wanting to come and access and develop the Buddha Dharma within. It's imperative that we create communal or communal virtue or virtue in general, communal virtue, to enable the Buddha Dharma to become established and to flourish here without making some communal virtue. So for example, through having the garden of the Nalanda Pandits, without having that basis whereby we in common, in general, in community can create virtue, it'll be very difficult for the Buddha Dharma to become established and be of benefit to people here. But by having something such as this Nalanda garden, the people here in this region can create so much merit. Just walking by, they can look at the statues, and by generating a virtue in their mind, by liking what they see, this helps create communal virtue, which enables our community, our Dharma center, to be not only established here, but to enable or bring about people having interest and wanting to cultivate the Dharma within. Without merit such as this, through mere wealth and physical ease, the Dharma will not flourish. It will not flourish within, and it will not flourish within a community. Merit is indispensable for this to come about. That's okay.
Ganzu danda bigi Latin garden secret any chodin chimbuti chodin namgi yores telaya leberuchi ku yores ra medu gurumbuchi ku ani medu dellerwa be ani kata choda a dinji dil teni anzu dizo shambal teni mi gyulaya sonam juntugoras ra anzu sonam dinji teni sonam juntugor madang anzu chi chö ngomadi shecheni 아니 손놈 중고는 빼마서 칼라가보다 중어머디 시는 아주 뒤져 고그래 아니 아주 뒤져 당근도 왔어 아니 대직님아 직니온이 배치 용수적 신조에 아주 탑시거라 매봤어 아주 저지 루니슈 숨줄이야 최장的최장 단다 사리면도 다 디지 용야래 손놈 사야디 아주 소투야 지그래다 Gumuludu song dena, and Kosun to the Shambana, son Miguel Sonum Saya, the Lela Ujreda, Garuji song, the Sanji Kujiva Sangupe, Sonum Lavaji Sounder, Songa, Dinza, the Zunganzu Zotu Dasra, and so Sotuya the Servina, Melapen Totachi. The rest of that is to join Sarcontan.
If we move down the hill from the garden of the statues of the 17 Pandits of Nalanda down to the Enlightenment Garden, where we also have the statue of Guru Rinpoche, as well as many stupas. People really enjoy being in that space, and they look upon the statues as well as the stupas, and they generate virtue in their mind. This is so important, because to have the sincere wish to cultivate the teachings of the Dharma within requires virtue. Without this prior calculation of virtue, one will not want to hear teachings. And to really develop the Dharma within one's mind so that radically transforms one's mind, one needs to engage in the Dharma with energy and enthusiasm for an extensive period of time. People such as myself have studied well, and I studied extensively for decades, and I still continue to do so. A lot of effort is required over an extensive period, but to be able to do so from whatever level requires a merit as a starting point. And here, this advice from Nagarjuna and from His Holiness and so many others, that through having images or representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, this is such an easy technique by which beings can cultivate virtue, and through this virtue want to engage in the Dharma and cultivate the minds of the Dharma within. This is such an easy technique to start this, to make this happen, to bring it into reality here. So sorry, I've gone a little bit over time, but please do forbear with that. That's all.
Thank you.
Final Lamrim dedication. From my 2 types of merits vasa space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a grand land of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds wisdom I inspired by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings, with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted boundless peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time. by even this graded path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you very much. And for those who are in Agompa, please, you're welcome to join us to celebrate our precious Geshe-la's birthday. Thank you.